Thank you all for joining me tonight. We have another new presentation. This one is Myths of Organic Gardening Debunked. So I try to do new material pretty often, at least a couple times a month if I can. And um, this happened to be one that I came across as a publication with a different extension out of a different state. And I thought, that'd be a pretty good one to do because there's a lot of this stuff that floats around out there. People will talk about, oh, yeah, you should try this. This is great. I've had nothing but good luck with this particular method. There's a lot about organics out there. We have a series of community gardens within Gwinnett County that we do a lot with, and they're all organic. A lot of community gardens are organic, and a lot of gardeners are also organic. And while organic is a great thing, there's a lot of work that goes into it because instead of just reaching and grabbing the nearest pesticide or herbicide or a synthetic fertilizer that's complete and has everything you could possibly need in it for your plants, you actually have to think about things. You got to look at chemical compounds. You got to figure out through education, is my plant deficient in something? How do I treat this bug the best way? What's the best life stage to treat it at? And so it gets a little more complex. And sometimes people, especially new folks who aren't or haven't been gardeners their whole lives, can get a little intimidated by it. And while as someone from Extension, UJ Extension, we do try to get out there as often as we possibly can to help and assure folks through education and presentations like this one that we're here to make their life a little bit easier as a gardener and teach them some things. And we hope that our master gardeners will also do that. Stuff like this that then ends up getting published on YouTube or someplace else, or has a master gardener pick it up and give this presentation, are invaluable tools because then folks can remember and they can take the notes and all of that, which I'm also very happy to provide the slide deck at the end of this. If you're interested in a copy, don't worry, all my contact information will be up on that last slide. Grab my email address. Feel free to ask if you would like it. Just go ahead and email me. We've got quite a few people on this particular video or webinar, so I can't email everybody because not everybody's registered. Some people have the link, but go ahead and email me. I'm happy to supply that. We also have a lot of folks that register from out of county, and I would love it if you all would be kind enough to put your city and state in the chat box. That way I can kind of keep track of where everybody is from. So spread the word if you enjoy these webinars and you learn stuff from them and you feel a little bit smarter, which is what we're here to do. Share it with a neighbor, share it with, if you're a master gardener, with another master gardener, and just spread the word. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So what does organic mean? I mean, we all hear the word organic and we know, oh, that's better for us, right? And generally it is. So it's a certification program that the USDA has instituted for growing products that are going to be without the use of synthetic pesticides, any additives. It kind of regulates how fertilizers are used in those organic products, things like that. Organic chemicals can be derived from natural compounds. The USDA actually has a list of organically approved pesticides that can be used on organic produce. So most people who are trying to do organics will go ahead and probably get that list and kind of try to adhere to them. I've had several webinars on different types of problems or issues that you might have while using organics, including nutrient deficiencies, how do you treat those, pesticides, What kind of pesticides are you going to use? Because that's a very valid concern because there's still bugs out there. They don't care whether you use synthetics or whether you use organics. And then, of course, the whole sustainable, eco-friendly, natural, all of that stuff. And so, kind of one of the first things that people think of is that, oh, organic produce is it's always going to have more nutrients. It's going to be better for you. And it's not necessarily the case. Just like organic pesticides are not necessarily safer for you or insects, certain insects. And also it's just it's a different way of doing things. I just want people to think about it's a different way of doing things. So with that, of course, there's always the old wives' tales. And that's what this is kind of going to be about. Because if you're on YouTube and you go down that hole, that rabbit hole of YouTube, you're going to find all sorts of stuff out there about things that you can do organically to make your garden better. And so some of them have some truth to them, a lot of them don't. So let's dive in. All right. So this one is going to be kind of an interactive type of webinar without actually everybody going, hey, I know what the answer is, because it would get really crazy if do that. But what I'm going to do is I'll have my slides up, and then I'm going to have a list of stuff, and then we're going to see which ones are myths and which ones are facts, and then a little take home, and we'll kind of talk about each one. All right, just like that. So let's just dive in. So organic fertilizer is better than commercially produced fertilizer. That is the myth or not myth. I don't know. Well, what is it? There we go. So, organic fertilizers produce a cheap, slow release form of fertilizer gentle on plants and soil. Generally, yes. Yes, they do. Is it easier? No, no, it is not. It is actually harder. The industry's gotten better about providing a complete product for folks to use, but it wasn't that long ago that you had to go out and buy, 3, 4, 5 different products, fish meal, maybe threw some borax down there. You had to cottonseed meal. I mean, you had to go buy a bunch of different stuff, and that got really expensive. Plus, a lot of people didn't know what they were putting down on their plants. And that's why I said there's a lot of chemistry involved in this. You really have to know what chemical compounds each of these things are so you can see what is actually in that plant or what that plant needs. You got to know what nutrients it's deficient in, and you also have to know what that particular fertilizer has. So organic matter in fertilizer going to improve soil structure. And yes, it is. It's going to be better. So every time you add manure, like a composted manure, different types, composted pine bark, black cow, mushroom compost, that kind of stuff. Every time you add that in there, that improves that soil structure. That's a good thing. Is it adding extra nutrients? Marginally so. You still are going to have to add other things besides that organic matter, but it does change and alter the soil structure for the better. Synthetic fertilizers that contain no carbon. So you have to kind of go through some additional steps. Using those soil microorganisms that are there, they can actually do some magic without getting into the real fundamentals of it. And they can actually help convert some of that by breaking down chemical compounds and allowing some things to be more readily available. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. There are other sources out there. All right, so organic fertilizers do not cause a buildup of salts in the soil or runoff from heavy fertilizers. Yes and no. So it's really regionally dependent. Out west, where we do actually get a lot of our produce, so from Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, a lot of those areas have a lot of agriculture because it's a more temperate climate. It's also very arid, but it has a lot of times it's up at elevation, so it's a much more temperate climate. Here, it's very hot, it's very humid. There's a lot of disease here, and out there, it's not necessarily the case. but they don't have the abundant rainfall that we have. Here we can get like 52 to 53, 54 inches of rain a year. That's a lot. And we don't generally have problems with salt buildup here. I do note that we have a lot of folks that move in from those areas, and people will ask about that. I do get folks that ask me, hey, do I need a permit to collect rainwater off my roof to use in my garden? No, you do not. Here, we don't have permits for that like they do out west, where water is gold, essentially. We also don't have the problems of a buildup of salts. And that comes from the salts that are left behind with irrigation water, and then that seeps back down, and then they pump it back up again, and you just have a cycle. And so it's getting more and more concentrated. We don't really have that out here, not like they do out west. Um, a good way to recycle yard debris and farm animal waste with compost manure. Yes. Yes, it is. As I've mentioned, black cow, you go to the store and buy a big bag of that. It's what it is. It's manure. Mushroom compost, same thing. It's the leftovers after they've farmed mushrooms on there. So it's a good way to also use your yard debris if you want to do that. If you can, put that in a nice compost pile, a nice tall, probably about 3 foot by 3 foot pile, and you too can have nice compost that you can add back in. Nutrient levels in organic fertilizers are often low and often in a complex form that requires timed release. Yes, very much so. As I've mentioned, it's very important to understand that when you're putting a organic fertilizer down, that organic fertilizer is basically whatever that chemical compound is. And you'll see some chemical compounds. I've gone ahead and looked it up and put that in a few areas in here. So just know that whatever it is, you have to look at what that chemical compound is to break it out and figure that it will be broken down by soil microbes in the environment and made usable in those elements that are in that chemical compound. But that's about the worst of the chemistry that you have to worry about. And then making your own compost is a messy and complex process. Yes, unfortunately, there's lots of different ways of making your own compost, some of them less messy, some of them quite messy, but none of them without being messy. But then if you're a gardener, it's all messy, right? Dirt. So, it's probably not something that it's going to bother you. So, overall, there are benefits of organic fertilizer for the soil organisms, and plants, but there are also disadvantages to both, honestly. And with commercially produced fertilizer, it really depends on where you are in this country. If you're in a more arid region, you may have some issues that you don't have over here. But ultimately, they both provide the same nutrients. Okay. Sugar helps plants grow taller, faster, and greener. I have heard this one. And I've even seen, I'll be doom scrolling on Instagram or Facebook or something, and I will see an app be advertised where it says, hold it over your plant that looks horrible. Oh, you need to use sugar. And I look at that and I kind of chuckle to myself because it's like, okay, you know, is it right or is it wrong? I see a lot of those. Well, plants make their own sugars via photosynthesis. So, not really. When you sprinkle sugar and you can see what the chemical composition of sugar is, you see down there in the middle, C12, H22O11, or yeah. So lots of carbons, lots of hydrogens, lots of oxygens. It's not very complex. It's just got a lot of those. So yes, there are those elements that are in there. But it's not the great save all that it's made out to be. Plants can't really absorb that through their root system. They're going to make their own simple sugars through photosynthesis called respiration. So next up, sugar feeds soil microbes, which improves plant health. Well, yes, in small amounts. That sugar might stimulate those soil microbes, but you can't put a ton of it down there because it'll start to cause some imbalances. So whenever you put something in the soil, um, sometimes you can throw stuff off balance. So nitrogen is highly variable in our soils, in our ecosystem. And I mean, it can get created and used very easily, which is one of the reasons why we don't test for it in our soil tests, because it's highly variable. What we test now might not be true a week from now. It just is. So while yes, in minuscule amounts, and when I say minuscule, I'm talking about like a pinch, way less than what you see here in this picture. It's not really going to do much. You're going to get more bang for your buck from an organic or inorganic fertilizer. Next up, sugar acts like a fertilizer by providing nutrients to plants. Not really. Like I said, sugar is a source of some essential nutrients, but not all of them. When I refer to all of them, excuse me, I mean a complete fertilizer. So plants can use anywhere between 13 to 15 or 16 different elements. That's a lot. You generally have your macronutrients, which are going to be the big three, the NPK, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, potassium, PK. And then you have a bunch of micronutrients, secondary or macronutrients, and then micronutrients, where you need a lot less of them. So they need a lot of different things, but just in different amounts, if you will. So sugar has some of those, but it is not complete. I just want to say that. And again, it doesn't check every box. There are other things out there that are a lot better at providing the elements that plants need. Sugar water can help cut flowers last longer. Maybe. So the jury's not out on that one necessarily. There's some evidence that it might, but it can also, in too high a level, cause fungal or bacterial problems. That is the case. So most people, if you're going to do that, you're just going to dump a whole bunch in there. But you may also want to put like a smidge of chlorine bleach or something like that. Not much, but that'll help inhibit any bacterial growth. So sometimes using what they provide, the little packet they provide with the flowers, is a better deal, or change your water out. That's a lot easier to do than to worry about how much sugar you put in your water. Applying sugar to lawns improves grass growth. I had not heard that one. That seems really inefficient to me because sugar is not very cheap. It's actually really expensive. So sugar can promote fungal growth. Yes. And it's not ideal for turf health. So I'm not sure where that one started from, but it was out there. I did see it as I was doing my research. So that's a big fat no. Sugar can be used to suppress weeds. This is not one I had heard of either, but some folks seem to think it does. And so there is some minuscule evidence that sugar might reduce nitrogen, which would then, because nitrogen is what helps the green grow, the new sprouts, the new shoots, all of that. So really, it could reduce nitrogen, which then would suppress the weeds. But again, there's a lot better solutions out there than what you're seeing here for sugar. So honestly, mixed evidence, not really thinking that it's doing a whole lot. Way better if you're making cookies and giving them to your family than it is to use it for this. Now, sugar does have its uses. You can feed honeybees. If you have honeybees, that's a really good use of it. But overall, not something that I would recommend for plants. Next up, planting marigolds, citronella, or garlic to keep insects away or wildlife away, basically a repellent, right? So I have heard this one, specifically with the marigolds around the outer edge of my garden. I grew up hearing that, and you did also. So these are also known as companion plants, and I've done a couple webinars on these. So marigolds repel, this is something you may have heard, repel mosquitoes and garden pests by being planted nearby. Well, not really. So kind of. I'll say kind of. So marigolds contain pyrethrum, which is a natural insecticide. So yes, it is contained there, but just the plant growing there really isn't normally enough to repel pests. So yes, in that they can help with nematodes, but not necessarily aphids, beetles, or other flying insects or insects that are able to get away from them. So yes, in some respects, no, in others. Don't use it as anything more than a pretty border for your garden. Okay, that's basically the take home on that one. Marigolds attract beneficial insects and that help control pests. Yes. So marigolds are can be a pollinating plant and they can attract predatory insects like ladybugs, hoverflies, and other things that will prey on those pests. So that's a biological control. That's actually a good thing. So while they're not repelling, they are attracting the bugs that then could eat and prey upon the bugs. So that's good. Citronella plants. So, I mean, how many times have we heard plant that citronella plant or have a whole bunch of them with the citronella candles and that kind of stuff on your deck to keep the mosquitoes away? I've heard that. Um, I've never seen it work, but I mean, it makes you feel good, right? So, citronella grass does contain essential oils that will repel mosquitoes. They do make natural products out of that you can use to help repel mosquitoes. There are, sprays that you can use. Uh, Off makes them. I mean, you can use them. But honestly, crushing the leaves yourself or having the extracted oil is way more effective than just having that plant growing in pots around your deck. You need that volatile oil to repel. Just the plant itself is not going to do it. Um, So as for the candles, nope, that's a big ain't not gonna happen. Garlic planted in gardens repels insects and wildlife. Well, maybe. So garlic has sulfur compounds. That's why I get the stinky breath, right? And that might repel things like aphids and ants and spider mites and all of that stuff. But again, you've got to crush it and you've got to have that volatile oil out there to repel it. The plant itself, just by growing there, not going to do it. So strong smelling companion plants might be effective, but not against all pests. And it's honestly the essential oil that's there in that plant that really needs to be extracted for it to be used. And there are others out there, peppermint and some others. It's the essential oil that is the repellent in this case, not just the plant. So if you're going to do something like that, consider using the essential oil. That gets expensive though. You might try other things like row covers, crop rotation, other things like that. And honestly, for deer and rabbits, I know they sell repellents out there that are supposed to be stinky. They tell you to use human hair, that animals don't like that, but the animals laugh at that. So there are some psychological ways that you can work at, or, electric fence. Reach out to us. We can give you some methods that are going to be way better than what you see here. Alcohol makes a good non-selective insecticide or fungicide for controlling pests. Well, I don't know. So, alcohol is safe and effective for all plants, sort of. So, alcohol spray can kill soft-bodied insects like mites or aphids, mealies, fungus gnats, that kind of thing, because it's a desiccant. And so that means that it dries out their waxy skin. And so they just kind of dry up and die. But if you have a delicate plant, something that can be damaged easily, you may also damage your plant while you're doing it because it can hurt those delicate tissues as well. So plants that actually will absorb alcohol through leaves or roots, they can be their growth can be slowed down, or they can actually be killed because alcohol can actually replace and make it harder for them to absorb water. So be very careful with that. Okay. Alcohol works as a non-selective insecticide and fungicide. Yes, alcohol does not discriminate. It can kill insects, fungi, but it can also kill bad insects and good insects. So again, be aware that it is very non-selective and it will kill plants, insects, all of it. So it's not safe. It's not 100% safe. Alcohol a long-term solution for pest control? No, it's a temporary thing. So if you've used it for mealies where you've sprayed it on there, it'll kill those, but it won't always kill, it doesn't kill eggs. You have to go back and do it again. So while you might have a succulent that has a real waxy leaf structure and you're perfectly fine using that, it may not be good on your African violet. So just be aware of that. It can be used to treat fungal infections. Yes. Um, just beware that you, like if you just your regular rubbing alcohol, you got to have 1 part of that to 9 parts of water, which is fairly dilute. And once you already have a fungal infection where you see it, it's there. Okay. You're not going to get rid of it. The whole thing that you want to try to do is prevent it. And that's hard. Treating fungal infections as a reaction, you can slow it down, but it's not, once it's there, it's there. Natural and harmless alternative to synthetic pesticides. Be great if it was. It is natural, but it is not harmless, as I've mentioned. It can burn leaves, it can harm beneficials, and it can disrupt that plant health. So, no, it can be used as an insecticide or fungicide for soft-bodied insects or insects in that particular stage of life, but you have to be very careful on which plants you're using it, and you have to be careful about the dilution rate because you can actually do more harm than good. Soda. I've heard this one too for controlling fungal diseases. Sometimes people talk about, oh, yeah, yeah, I heard you can use baking soda to treat that. They don't know why. Somebody told them they should do it. So they did. And well, mixed results here. So, baking soda is a fungicide for foliar diseases like powdery mildew. Treat it with a powdery mildew. Yes. So there are studies, actual scientific studies, not just grandma telling you what, that sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda, can suppress powdery mildew because it alters the pH on the leaf surface. So that can inhibit spore germination. So it can slow things down. It's as long as you get it there before, like some hot and humid weather's coming and you've got powdery mildew coming, and you want to try to help your squash from getting that, you can go out there and try to spray it on the leaf surfaces and it will help a little bit. Okay. Baking soda cures all fungal diseases on all plants. Sounds good, but not really. So it can help with some fungi, like this powdery mildew, like I mentioned in the previous bullet point, but it is not effective on everything. It's very selective, okay? Basically, just a surface type of fungi like powdery mildew. Baking soda is safe for all plants and can be sprayed freely. Well, yeah, you put it in your fridge for odor preventative. You can use it around the house as a cleanser. Surely it's great for your garden, right? No. So, baking soda, which is sodium, Na, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, is a salt. So, what have we learned about salts? Sorry, there is a little bit more chemistry. Well, salts in your ground in the soil is not a good thing, not in mass quantities because it can cause problems, and it doesn't matter what type of salt. Okay, but overuse also on plants can cause leaf burn. It causes cellular disruption and it can actually prevent water absorption. So the same way it works within the cells of your body, it also works in the cells of the plant. It can cause problems. So you have to be real careful. Plus, baking soda is alkaline. It's pH. If you remember the pH scale, seven's in the middle, and then your alkaline side, that's going to be like 8 to 14, and then your acidic side, which is going to be 7, well, below 7 to 1 or 0. So that means that that's on the alkaline side, and it can raise soil pH. And a lot of plants prefer to be about 6.2 to 6.8. There are some like blueberries and gardenias and some others that prefer acidic soils, but generally speaking, most plants prefer 6.2 to 6.8. It can interfere with nutrient uptake on plants. So you got to remember that sweet spot. If you use too much of this stuff, you'll actually get that pH above 7, and it can also start to move out of range where plants can absorb nutrients. So you may be going all out and putting organic fertilizers down, but if your plant can't absorb any of that because you've been spraying baking soda like crazy, trying to take care of powdery mildew, it all bets are off. Your plants aren't going to do well anyway. So just be very careful about how you are applying this if you choose to use it. It can be useful, but you have to be careful. You don't want to spray it on the soil or wash it down into the soil. It can cause problems. So baking soda is a reliable substitute for commercial fungicides? No. In a pinch, mild cases, but it is not a replacement for targeted fungicides or if you have a really bad infestation. So it's not something that you can just use without thinking about the repercussions of it. Combining baking soda with horticultural oil to improve its effectiveness. Yes, believe it or not. So there is some research, scientific research, that shows that combining these two with either a horticultural oil or insecticidal soap, we'll go into insecticidal soap, can improve adhesion and antifungal actions. So yes, it can. It helps break down and allow the ability of it to adjust the pH on the leaf surface. So if you have a very waxy leaf, this can help get through that. So yes. So baking soda solutions can be useful for controlling fungal diseases and some minor pest issues. So as long as you are careful. Releasing beneficials will help control pest insects in my yard. Well, I actually have experience on this one. I did buy some ladybugs. They did not hang around very long. And I think anybody that's tried adding beneficials to their garden can probably attest. They probably experience the same thing. And it's very frustrating because they're not cheap. So releasing beneficial insects guarantees pest control. No, that's a big fat no, because if they don't like where they are, they're going to fly away. So really, the success depends on the timing, the pest population, because if there's not enough food there, they're not going to hang around. Habitat, if you don't have their preferred habitat, they're not going to hang around. And all of that, all of those variables, that's going to make the difference on whether they hang around or not. Some of them might, they may all leave. It's really difficult to tell. Ladybugs, lacewings, parasitic wasps, all these guys, effective natural predators? Yes, they are. They are biologicals that we want to attract into our yard. And if you can have the things that they want, like aphids and caterpillars and that kind of stuff, then yes, if you see them out there, encourage them to be there. So if you've got tomato hornworms and you notice all these little white knobby things on the tomato hornworm, that's actually a parasitic wasp larva. Leave it alone because that's next year's population. So I know it's hard and you don't want to leave him on there, but they're going to eat him from the inside out. And then all those little baby wasps will be out there. They're the next generation. You want them to hang around. They're actually good. Beneficial insects will stay where you release them. I think that's a big fat no. They're going to go wherever the food and shelter is. So, what can you do to help improve that? Well, here's some options in the spring and the summer when pests are more abundant. That's when you release them. In the evening, early evening, when it's cooler, insects tend to, quote, bed down for the night. They're looking for shelter. So if they're active during the day, they're going to go into diurnal kind of, well, not diurnal, but like a torpor. They go to bed for the night, essentially. So if you release them in the early evening, they may settle down for the night. They may not fly off as quickly the next day. Watered gardens, water your garden so the humidity is high. That can help prevent those that fly from flying away. It's hard for them to fly when the humidity is high, so that might help them stay. Near a food source, so put them, if you have tomatoes that are infested with aphids, release them nearby. And then delay your pest control methods a little bit so that there's more food for them. Creating habitat, of course. That's the same thing we say when you were trying to get rid of something. Get rid of the habitat, get rid of the food source. So if you want to attract them, have the habitat, have the food source. So providing native plants, nectar sources, shelter, that kind of stuff. Beneficial insects can replace all pesticides? We wish, but no, because they're just a small part of integrated pest management, but not a complete substitution for everything else that you might need. Plus, if you've gone over the threshold for damage, you're going to have to institute some kind of probably some kind of insecticide because they can't do all of the work for you. They're kind of a piece of the puzzle, if you will. Plus, they're expensive. I mean, you can get them online. They're pretty easy to source, but at 10 to 125, depending on what insect, for 100, and it really depends on the life stage too. It's expensive and it doesn't always work. So, and then is beneficials are releasing them? Is it safe for pollinators? Yes. So when done responsibly, it's going to reduce chemical use and it's going to support ecological balance. But don't rely 100% on them. Integrated pest management, it's a holistic. I mean, it is everything. You've got to have multiple different things that you're trying. So beneficial insects control pests, but cost is high and they don't hang around. So see ya. All right. Vinegar makes a great organic herbicide. I've heard this definitely. Is it? Well, vinegar is a powerful organic herbicide that will kill weeds effectively. So household vinegar, what you just get at the store, 5% acetic acid. Horticultural vinegar, 20 to 30%. That's a lot higher concentration. And industrial strength, 75%. The pH on this stuff is very, very acidic. Okay, like 4, 3, 4, somewhere in there. And it can damage young weeds by basically by desiccating tissue and also by pH. So, yes, but with that also comes that vinegar is a non-selective herbicide, meaning it will kill anything. So it's kind of a ground clear option. If you have some rocks like a patio area, fire pit area, and you keep getting plants that are growing their weeds, it's a ground kill, kind of a ground clear option. It's non-selective. It's going to kill everything because the pH on this stuff is so low, not many plants can tolerate that. Is it safe for all garden use? No, obviously not, because it kills everything. The pH is just too low. It'll also irritate your skin. So if you're using industrial strength or horticultural vinegar, it can cause skin irritation. It can cause eye irritation. So you need to use PPEs just like you would with synthetic pesticides and herbicides. Vinegar kills weeds down to the root. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. It's a contact herbicide. That means that it doesn't kill the root. Synthetics will kill the root. So when you go out and you purchase something that has 2,4-D or trichophor or glyphosate, yes, you can still buy it, Roundup. That is a systemic and means it will translocate from the leaves down to the root system and it will kill the root. Vinegar does not do that. It's just a contact. It'll kill back the leaves, the above ground stuff, but the root stays. So it's just going to regenerate and grow again. Vinegar is a safe alternative to synthetic herbicides. Yes, when used carefully. It's going to break down quickly, but it still requires caution. As I mentioned on the above points, it can do damage to you too. And if you're trying to use it within a garden bed of other stuff that you like, you really can't use it there. I mean, it's got, like I said, ground clear capabilities. You can do that, but be careful about seepage into nearby garden beds. And vinegar works best in cool, cloudy conditions. Actually, no, it's more effective in hot, sunny weather. It's going to increase that leaf desiccation, which is what you want to happen. It's basically burning that leaf and it's using the UV and sun energy to do that. So, vinegar Solutions can be somewhat useful for controlling small or young weeds. It's not quite as good on older weeds with repeated applications, um, but it can affect the pH and soil biota. And remember, soil is the basis of everything. So if you mess around too much with the organisms that live in soil, your plants aren't going to do very well anyway. So if you're going to do it, be very careful about where you do it. All right, Epsom salts, great for use for plants to help them green up or sweeten the soil. I have heard this so much, and I bite my tongue and I'm like, you know. So some things, yes, some things, no. So Epsom salts helps plants green up by boosting chlorophyll. Yes, the magnesium, and there's your chemical compound again. In the magnesium and sulfur and oxygen in Epsom salts is essentially chlorophyll production. So I did not put the photosynthesis um, equation up there. I didn't want you all to go crazy with chemistry. I have to put a little in there, but I didn't want to put too much in there. That's going to give the leaves their green color that chlorophyll is. So that magnesium does give that a little bit of a boost. So yes, Epsom salts are a cure-all for yellowing leaves. Not really, but kind of. So yellowing leaves can be a result of many different issues: nitrogen deficiency, overwatering, disease, not enough water. It's not just magnesium. It's not just some of those others. The chlorosis, which means the yellowing of the plant tissue, um, there's all sorts of nutrient deficiencies. And that's where I said with organics, you really need some good infographics. You really need some good um, pictures to kind of look at if you're not real familiar with which type of nutrient deficiency it is, because a lot of them manifest in different ways, and you really need to know what it is so that you treat it appropriately. And folks, planting in raised beds, it's very important that you understand that the soil mixture that you have in your raised bed is it's considered a soilless mix in general conditions, unless you've gone out and you've dug it from a hole in the backyard. Most people are buying it in a bag and they're dumping it in there, and it can use up the nutrients over time because they don't put a lot of elements. Mineralized soil, or the stuff you dig out of a hole in your backyard, is not usually what's in those beds. Mineralized soil is going to have a lot of different elements in it, things that those plants need. Otherwise, you have to add it back in. So when you see complete fertilizer, that means that it's got all those extra things. So when you give them plant food, or you give them some other kind of fertilizer and it's labeled as complete, that means that it's got those micronutrients. Some salts sweeten the soil for tomatoes and peppers. Yes, um, but these plants tend to show more of a magnesium deficiency than other plants do, and they're heavy feeders, is what we call them. And so, yes, it can help, but there are other things out there that can help also. And we really would request you do a soil test to find out what else it might be deficient in. Because usually, if you're deficient in like magnesium, you're probably deficient in some other things too. They, excuse me, Epsom salts improve seed generation and nutrient uptake. Well, no, there's not a lot of scientific evidence on this, that Epsom salts improve germination or uptake beyond the correction of a nutrient deficiency. So, if it was already deficient in magnesium, yes, it will help from that aspect, but generally speaking, no. Are they organic and environmentally safe? Yes. Magnesium sulfate is very naturally occurring, and it's generally safe when applied appropriately. That doesn't mean take that bag that you see there and just dump it all out there. Don't do that, because then you're going overboard, and we don't want to do that either. So while Epsom salts on plants can add magnesium in a case of a deficiency, overuse can lead to some other problems. So it can lead to calcium, phosphorus, and potassium deficiency, because when you have too high of a level of one, it can inhibit the absorption of some others. So without going into the finer points of why that happens. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's why we always recommend you apply label directions, get a soil test to figure out what you need, if anything, and don't go overboard on the fertilizer because it's not going to help always. Beer makes a great fertilizer for your home garden. I got to speed up here. So contains nutrients for helping grass grow? Not really. Um, this one's going to strike out on all of them. Beer feeds soil microbes and improves soil health? No. Um, Microbes need all sorts of other elements, and it's just not present. Really, you're just dealing with simple sugars. Is it safe, organic alternative to synthetic fertilizers? Oh, it's not formulated for plant nutrition. You're better off to go out there while you're putting fertilizer out from a bag to drink the beer than you are. I mean, there's some uses for beer other than just drinking, but no. Beer-based lawn tonics, are they effective? No, 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 no. Sometimes people will combine beer and ammonia and dish soap. No, that's just going to hurt your soil biology. Just don't do it. Plus, you might attract insects, like you'll see here in a bit, slugs. Can it green up your lawn? No, 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 no. Um, there's no nitrogen really to speak of. Okay, so just no. So beer is just a big fat no. There are some minor nutrients. I'll give it a little tiny check mark, but the potential harm from other organisms coming in and setting up shop, no, don't do it. Just leave. Plus, that's really expensive. I don't know why anybody would dump, beer on their lawn. I mean, that's silly. All right, beer to make a great bait to kill slugs. I have heard this one over and over again. So, beer does attract slugs. They're drawn to the yeast, the fermentation compounds. So, yes, it does attract them. Beer traps and kills a lot of slugs? Not really. Okay, because it's just a very localized thing. Now, I mean, you could go put beer out all around your yard, but your neighbors might think you're a little crazy, and that can get expensive. So there are some other things out there that you can use for slugs. But hey, if decided that you're done with drinking and you've got to do something with your beer, the slugs will appreciate it, I guess. Beer is a safe and organic method for slug control. Yes, yes, it is. It's non-toxic to pets, although if your dog drinks it, they might get a little drunk, and wildlife. And when used in shallow traps, not deep ones, it's safer than chemical baits. All slugs, are they equally attracted to beer? Not really. So some particular species are more attracted to it than others. So it just really depends on which one. Beer traps are best in deep containers, so slugs will drown. Actually, no, shallow containers work better. So I don't know. Somebody did some research on it. Um, Beer traps work best when combined with other methods? Yes. So IPM, you'll see it here again, obviously, but IPM works in a lot of different ways. So hand picking, putting up some barriers, habitat reduction, things like that, than beer alone. So beer can attract and kill a few slugs, but it is not the end all be all. So I would use it maybe as part of an IPM program, but don't expect that it's going to control them all. Tobacco. I actually talked to a lady who was using tobacco in her garden. And I didn't say anything at the time, but tobacco is actually the nicotine sulfate in tobacco. It's actually pretty dangerous to use in a situation like that. So, tobacco kills insects due to its nicotine content. Yes, it's a very fast acting neurotoxin to insects, including pollinators. So you may be unwittingly killing the pollinators that are out there in addition to the bad bugs. That's part of why, there's some other, it works really well, but there are some other methods that are not as dangerous. So tobacco sprays target only harmful pests? No. It kills all insects, including bees, butterflies, and other beneficials like ladybugs that are biologicals that can help kill some of the bad stuff. So it's non-selective. It kills everything. Homemade tobacco sprays are safe and effective. No, no, they are not. They're very harmful again for all sorts of insects, not just the bad stuff. And nicotine is also highly toxic and not approved for home garden use. So it can stay in a plant system for many weeks. It's also there, and as we go down, we'll see tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, um, you know, susceptible to tobacco mosaic virus. And you can end up killing your plants and you wouldn't get any tomatoes or other things because of that. Um, is it safe with the proper dilution? No, not really. There's a lot of better options that are out there. So I would just say if you're growing tobacco so that you can use it as an insecticide, not recommended, actually. And tobacco and organic and environmentally friendly pest control. No, nicotine is natural, but not environmentally safe. And it is also toxic to humans. So if you're using it, you're absorbing it through your skin. It's not good for you either. So tobacco-based insecticides are banned or restricted. Yes, yes, they are because of toxicity concerns both to humans and to insects, pollinators. And then, of course, they don't treat tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. Yes, 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 yes. So tobacco can be an effective insecticide, but there's a high risk in handling that for pollinators and for the tobacco mosaic virus. Dish soap insecticide. So, insecticidal soap. There's a lot of recipes out there. Um, is it better or cheaper to make your own than it is to go buy it in a bottle? Well, I've been guilty at times of telling people the recipes out there, but dish soap is not the same as insecticidal soap. So they're formulated differently. Home-based soaps are okay, let me reverse that. Commercial insecticidal soaps use potassium salts or fatty acids, and that minimizes plant damage. Where household dish soaps use a sodium based, and sodium is toxic to plants. So the commercial insecticidal soaps are not going to leave that residue behind, and they're non-toxic to animals and birds, and you can use them on vegetables up to harvest. So the household insecticidal soaps will actually dissolve that waxy, oily cuticle on there. And there's also other stuff in there, degreasers, the surfactants, which help it adhere to the surface, dyes and other chemicals, and those could be harmful to plants. So if you think you're saving a little bit of money by making your own, you're probably better off to just go down and buy the insecticidal soap at the big box store. So dish soap can kill soft-bodied insects. Yes, yes, it can. It does it the same way that the commercial grade does. But again, it can also cause plant damage as well. And we're trying to avoid that. Homemade sprays safe for all plants? No, not really. It can cause defoliation. It can cause spotting, leaf burn, that kind of stuff. Is it cost effective? Yes, it can be, but you gotta weigh, is it gonna cause more damage on your plants, or is it worthwhile to just get the insecticidal soap that they sell that's potassium based? And all dish soaps work equally well? No. Some of them have bleach, antibacterial agents, degreasers, all of that stuff, all those extra additives can be very harmful to plants. So, not all created equal. And testing of if you're going to do it, if you go out there and you get some type of soap that doesn't include all of that, it's just a very gentle soap, test it first on some leaves before you use it and just to make sure. So making your own may be effective against certain insect pests, but can also be harmful to the plants. All right, corn gluten meal, is it effective? So it can add nitrogen, yes. It's a byproduct from milling corn gluten meal it is. It binds up water, it'll kind of desiccate the soil and takes some of that water away from seedlings that are going to use it. But, and we're going to kind of whiz through this, It's while it is a proven organic pre-emergent herbicide, it can reduce seedlings. You got to put a lot of it down, 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That's a lot. And it's expensive. It is not cheap. Have you ever tried to buy a thing of preen? I mean, that's only good for like a small bed. You got to buy a lot of that stuff. Um, so does corn gluten meal prevent weed seeds from germinating? No, and neither does pre-emerge synthetic pre-emergents that you can buy. It's not going to stop in germination, but in this case with the corn gluten meal, it inhibits the root development and helps desiccate. So the weeds basically kind of choke off and die. With other types of pre-emergence, it basically causes them to stop being able to grow. So it's got a growth restrictor in there. So they germinate and they grow to a certain point, but it chokes off their growth. And once they use the nutrients in their seed, they die. Corn gluten meal safe for lawns and garden beds? Yes, it's not going to harm grass or plants when applied properly. Um, but you have to be careful about that nitrogen component. As you can see on that bag, it's got 900. So if you already have weeds that are germinated, you're feeding the weeds. Yes, you are. So that's why you have to be careful about weed and feeds. And this one, you're feeding the weeds. So do all of these corn gluten products work the same? No, they do not. You have to get really high protein corn gluten that's specifically labeled as a pre-emergent. If you go and you get a byproduct from, say, the cow farm down the road, that's a feed grade product. That's not going to work for you. And so again, it's pretty expensive. So just be mindful of that. There's other stuff out there um, that's probably a better option for weed pre-emergent. Crushed eggshells, slugs. So no, they crawl right over them. I know, grandma probably told you it was a good thing to do. But the good news is that they are environmentally safe, they're biodegradable, they're compostable, so they're going to help with the soil health. And there are better slug baits out there that you can get that are not going to be completely useless like this stuff is. I use eggshells for a lot of different stuff. I feed them back to my chickens. They're great in a compost bin, that kind of stuff. But they're not going to deter the slugs. They don't really care. They're just going to go ahead and glide right over the top of them. There are some other natural methods, so you can keep the ground clear of vegetative matter. That's what the slugs are looking for. You can consider using wood ash. We'll get to that one at the end. That may be a byproduct. There's supposedly it's supposed to be irritating to them. I did some research. I didn't find a lot of evidence based that, but I guess it depends probably also on what you're burning in your wood. Copper tape around each plant, not proven in scientific studies. It may just be a physical barrier, in other words, but it's not actually keeping them away in any other way besides just being a physical barrier. Iron phosphate with EDTA, that's in your baits that you're going to get. If very effective on slugs, but has some toxic concerns for in the environment. So be careful how much you use. And then beer traps. Again, we just went over that. The slugs, it'll kill some of them, but it doesn't kill a ton of them. But if you have a prized plant that they seem to target, you can use them. Use that for them. So eggshells are not really effective for slugs, but they do add some minor nutrients like calcium to the soil. Banana peels. I'm running late. Banana peels, very rich in potassium and nutrients, yes. So is it a magic fertilizer? Not really. It's got a very low amount of the NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in there. Very low. So just a very light fertilizer. Is it a complete fertilizer? No. No, it is not. It doesn't have nitrogen, which is what plants need the most of for that leafy green growth. But you can see all the different elements that it does, and it does have a lot in there. So it does come closer to being a complete fertilizer than many other natural sources. So you may have to add some other type of nitrogen to the mix if you're going to use banana peels. Burying peels attracts pests like rodents and raccoons. Yes, it does. But that's why you have to be careful about what you put into a compost pile. Um, the peels can attract animals. They may rot anaerobically, meaning without oxygen, and that gets kind of stinky, smells rotten if buried too deeply. And you could have some other soil organisms extracting stuff, and it may take a lot longer to decompose. Um, it just depends. But it is a natural thing. And so, honestly, as it does decompose and you're composting, it's going to turn into organic matter like everything else. So, microbial activity, all the little fungi and the bugs and the bacteria and everything that's in your soil, it's going to feed on it, it'll break it down, and ultimately it does go back to the soil. And is it a instant boost to your plants? No, just like with a regular compost pile, it's going to take a while for it to break down, just like everything else in there. So it is not an instant boost. You pretty much have to get like Miracle Grow or some kind of liquid fertilizer for that. Even the tea, and you can make a tea out of that. You see that's mentioned in there. It is not an instant thing like worm tea with or earthworm poo, essentially. You can make an earthworm tea. That's got some nutrient value to it. Most of that's going to be locked in your banana peels. You have to wait for it to actually decompose and break down. So, burying them is not going to have many nutrients in the short term, but you can put it in there to compost like everything else, and it will give back more of that over time. Coffee grounds, lowering the pH of your garden. So they're highly acidic and they'll acidify your soil. No. So some coffee grounds are acidic, but they're really pretty close to what plants like. So it's actually not that bad. I know people that toss them into their compost heap all the time. It's perfectly fine for that. Coffee grounds are a reliable way to acidify soil for acid loving plants. No, because it's not it's not acidic enough. I will say that. Some plants like blueberries or azaleas need even more acidity, like 5.5. And for that, sulfur peat moss is much better than this. Can you use coffee grounds to improve soil structure? Yes, yes, you can. It's good. It's a good, rich organic matter. And so I have some folks that will go to Starbucks or Caribou Coffee and they'll get the leftover coffee grounds for their compost heaps. That's perfectly fine to do that. Are they all equal acidic? No. Bean types, roast levels, brewing methods, all of that can contribute differently. So soil pH, while not affected a lot, can be affected by different methods, and so it can change a little bit. Um, Coffee grounds best composted before adding to soil? Yes. Just throw it in your compost pile, and then after it's all done, that's when you add it back. It's a good, rich organic matter at that point. Can they help control weeds? Surprisingly, yes. This was a new one to me. So the caffeine in coffee grounds can be mildly toxic to grassy weeds. Yes, there is scientific evidence on this. I do have all the citations. It's just a mess if you try to put them all up here. So if you're really super curious about it, you can always reach out to me and I'll share. But it can be effective at some grassy weeds and weed seedlings at suppressing them. So that was kind of interesting. Can they lower pH over time? Yes, over time, which means that you got to do it over a very long period of time. And in sandy soils, they might actually have a lower pH due to residual organic acids. Again, more research. So if you need to get a lower pH pretty quickly, probably not your best bet. They can minimally acidify it, but that's about it. There are other better ways of doing it. Wood ash, I think this is the last one. So wood ash does add valuable nutrients to your soil. So it if you get it out of your fireplace or your fire pit or something like that, it can be used as a soil amendment for calcium, potassium, magnesium, and other trace elements because that's going to be dependent on what's in the actual wood that was burned. You just have to make sure if it's chemically treated, like if it's, it's been treated for outdoor use, no. If it's been painted, no. If it's had lighter fluid on it, like you want a really big bonfire, no. You can't use all of that because that puts toxins into it. You don't want to grow in that. So just make sure that it's just plain old wood out of the backyard or a tree fell down or something like that. Small amounts, wet ashes. What do you think they do with lye soap? So yeah, don't use it when it's wet like that. If you're going to use it, use very small amounts of dry ash and mix that into the soil first. Fork the ashes into the soil or just add them into your compost pile and then mix them in. It'll be fine. Um, Nitrogen for plant growth? No. Nitrogen's actually burned off in combustion when you're burning. So that wood ash isn't going to have that. Um, Apply tons of it. I've actually had people call me. He was dumping lots and lots of wood ash out there on his wife's garden, thinking he was helping. And when she saw he was doing that, she got really upset and said, "No, you just ruined it." Yes, he did. Excessive ash can lead to nutrient imbalances, salt buildup, and overly alkaline soil. That in his case, that's what was when his pH was 8.5, way too high. And that's because he'd been putting it on there all winter as they were burning wood in the fireplace. So he had to go correct that with sulfur, and she couldn't grow anything that summer because it was so off and she was really unhappy. So he was in the doghouse. Wood ash, safe to use on all plants? Not necessarily. It can harm the acid loving plants like blueberries because it's alkaline. It's going to shift that pH over to the right. So, okay for some, not for others. Good substitute for lime? Surprisingly, yes, because as I said, it can shift that pH over to the right, to the alkaline side. So the wood ashes can raise that soil pH. It's a natural way to do that. Lime is too, but if you can't find lime for whatever reason, it's a good substitute if you have that. Free versus not. And then there's your directions on how to do that. So keep in mind, only in moderation, and know your pH so that you don't go past 6.8. Um, Nutrients, yes, not too often. Milk, powdery mildew, wasn't the last one. So yes, milk can suppress it, but you got to get it on there before it shows up. That's the rub. Yes, there are studies that show that it's an antifungal agent. So the lactic acid can change the pH a little bit and give it an antiseptic kind of effect, and it works on powdery mildew. And there's some of the crops that it does. But you have to spray it pretty regularly, or if you have rain, that kind of thing. It works because of pH or acidity. No, it's actually due to the lactoferrin and enzymes, not pH. So for those of you that were using it and thinking it was pH, it's actually some other stuff in there, some enzymes and things. But hey, if you've used it and it's worked, that's a good thing. Whole milk works better than skim. Yes, there's more fat and protein that enhances those antifungal properties. So if you've noticed that full works better than skim, yes, it does. Does it cure it? No, it doesn't. It can suppress the symptoms, but it doesn't eliminate it entirely, especially if it's already present. You're better off starting to use it when you get into a hot, dry, or hot, humid pattern to try to suppress it and prevent it from growing than you are to go back out, try to spray it and get rid of it now. That's not really going to work. Once you have it, it's there for that season. Is it safe for plants in the environment? Yes. So if it's diluted well, it's very safe and biodegradable, and it shouldn't, at that level, attract too many pests. You can, if you use full fat, undiluted milk, the spoiled milk smell may attract some pests or cause some odor issues. So just be wary of that. So yes, it can be effective, but there are alternative methods. So you may want to look at some of those. And so we're done. I ran about 15 minutes late. I'm sorry about that. Unfortunately, that happens sometimes, especially, oops, in the trying to get my There we go. Trying to get the chat down. Okay. If you have to drop off, I get it. But if you have questions, I will zoom through here and see if there's any questions, and you can drop them in the chat box. I appreciate everybody that put where they're from on here. Is Are kelp products good for lawns? So, kelp. Um, I will have to do some research on that. I mean, it's an organic product, I guess. Kelp meal, you can use it. It's probably just an organic product like anything else. But I would think because it's got to be refined and shipped from someplace out by the ocean, it's probably not cheap. So that is a good question. I'll have to do some research on that. I don't live near the ocean, so that is not something that I have um, or sorry, gardens. Oh, I'll have to look into that. I honestly, I don't know, but I would imagine just like any other organic matter, it's probably fine to use. There's a lot of iron in it. So just like it probably would be ironite and some of the other stuff, it's providing some elemental support. So if it's deficient in iron, probably. But other than that, I will actually have to do some research. Is Castile soap safe? I had that in mind when I was thinking about that, and that would require a little bit more research on my part because I believe Castile soap is still sodium based, and it's the sodium that's toxic. So you would have to find a soap that's potassium based, that's not sodium based. And I don't know if Castile soap is sodium or potassium based. I'm going to guess it's probably sodium based. It is more gentle than other soaps that are out there. So there is that. But I think it is sodium based. So I would have to look into that. Um, okay, let's see. I have been seeing people using hydrogen peroxide for Phytophthora to kill the organism and add oxygen to the soil. So, hydrogen peroxide, yes, I mean, it can kill tissue. Okay. Um, the same reason that you're told to be careful when you're using it on your own cuts. It does clean, it's got that bubbling action, but it can also damage tissue. So you have to be really careful about how you're using it. So much like some of the other um, natural things on here that had um, warnings about them that they can damage tissue, so too would hydrogen peroxide. Um, it can add oxygen to the soil, but it can also cause problems and kill some of the microbes. So you just have to be kind of careful, I guess. Let's see. Kelp is good but expensive. Yeah, I would think it would be expensive. It's probably cheaper if you're out that way towards the seashore, maybe. Printout of this meeting. Yes, just email me and I'm happy to provide a copy of the slide deck in a PDF form. And this is being recorded and it will go up on the Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel, which you should have the link there. Let's see. Are all ladybugs beneficial or just the native ones? I thought that Asian ones are harmful. So they're an invasive. They populate. They love to reproduce and they love to come in our houses when it gets cold, and then they can't make it back out, and they're not cold hardy, so they will die in vast numbers, but then they just do the whole thing the next time. They bite. I hate them. Um, do they have any beneficial whenever you have an invasive from some other part of the world that comes in and they're here and they did not grow up in this particular ecology? Are they beneficial? They have some redeeming qualities. They can be pollinators just like regular ladybugs can, but they don't contribute as much as the natives do, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any other questions? If you don't, that's perfectly fine. Um, Looks like nobody else does. Thank you all for coming. Sorry I had to keep you late, but thank you for coming and I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the evening. Thanks.